Hello, my name is Narokath, and this is a commentary on Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, and what I like to call the impossible challenge. If you're not familiar with this game, I'll try my best to explain it as we go along. And before we jump into the game, let me first explain the rules and what they entail. There are 12 chapters in the game, all with different characters, and our goal is to beat as many of them as we can under 5 restrictions. And they are: number 1, no healing. In this game, you have 3 resource meters: Sanity, Magick, and Health. And normally, you can use Magick or items to restore them, but we are not allowed to do so. Rule number 2 is mandatory magic use only. There are several puzzles in the game that are solved through the use of magic, but magic can also be used to enhance your character, deal damage, among other things. But we are only allowed to use magic to make progress in the game. Rule number 3, mandatory item pickups only. So same thing there, we're only allowed to pick up things that progress the game. Rule number 4, Pacifist, which means defeat as few enemies as possible. And the ones we do have to defeat, we do so by punching only. So no weapons or magic to deal damage. Rule number 5, no glitches allowed. This game has a wide variety of glitches that can sequence break and even straight up skip entire chapters. We will not be using any of those, as I want this challenge to be something anyone can just pick up and play and try for themselves, without having to learn advanced tricks and glitches. So, without further ado, let's jump into the first chapter. Alright, so this is Pious Augustus. He's a Roman centurion, and he is a star of our first chapter, which basically serves as the tutorial for the gameplay, exploration, combat, item pickups, and usage. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Most of these rooms have these Mantarok zombies, which you can practice the combat on, but of course we will not be doing so. We're just going to pick up these granite blocks, which we'll need in a later room. And Pious Augustus turns out to be this game's main antagonist. And this is the last time he is human. And I think it's pretty neat that you get to play the antagonist in the beginning and kind of see how they fell into evil, so to speak. But I'm not gonna explain the story too much. I'm gonna focus more on the challenge itself and the gameplay portion. And yeah, while this chapter plays out, I'm just gonna give a brief background on the game. It was released in 2002 for the Nintendo GameCube. It's an action-adventure psychological horror game, and it was the first game Nintendo published to receive a mature rating from the ESRB. It was developed by Silicon Knights and mainly produced and directed by Dennis Dyack, but it was also produced by Shigeru Miyamoto and Satoru Iwata. And this game is mostly famous for its sanity system, which is something we'll see later on. When your sanity gets low, your character will start to hallucinate, and you can have a bunch of different visual and audio effects that confuse not only the character, but also you, the player, breaking the fourth wall, stuff like that. You will see it later on. And while this game was widely accepted or acclaimed by critics and won numerous awards, it was a commercial failure, unfortunately, selling only 500,000 copies. And while a direct sequel and spiritual successor was explored, it never ever came into fruition. But one can still hope. So in this part, the game teaches you about the lock-on system. You can attack different parts of the body, and that will have different effects. But I think that is the only time we use a weapon for targeting in that way. The rest of the gameplay will be punching only. And that is pretty much the end of Pious's chapter. You can pick one of these artifacts, which will, it will change the story a little bit, but for the challenge and the gameplay portion, it doesn't make that much of a difference. So that's Pious's chapter. At the end of each chapter, we're going to return to this screen, and we'll put a mark on whenever or not the chapter was possible under those restrictions, and Pious's chapter gets a clear pass. Okay, welcome to chapter 2. We are playing as Ellia. She is a court dancer, found herself trapped in this temple. And in this chapter, the game opens up a little bit more. It's not as linear. You have more items, enemies, you have traps, and it also introduces the sanity system, which we'll see very soon. So this first one you can't really avoid, but it's pretty simple. You just time it and run through. In this room we will face our very first zombie. Depending on which ancient you picked up as Pious, it will change which of these different zombie types you face. But here you go. So that green meter in the top left is your sanity meter. And every time an enemy sees you, not all enemies, but most enemies, it will drain your sanity. And normally you're supposed to defeat the enemies and use something called a finishing move to regain that sanity loss. But since we're only allowed to defeat enemies that hinder our progress, in this case we need to defeat them. But we can only do so by punching, which will make it considerably more challenging, but also sometimes pretty tedious. It will take a long time to get some enemies down. But when on the ground like that and flashing, you can use something called a finishing move, but you can't do it with your fists. And even if we could do that, we wouldn't allow it because it does restore your sanity. And so we're just going to wait for the zombie to get back up so we can punch it again, and then it is considered dead and we can escape the room. And this is where the challenge becomes quite scary, especially for some characters later on, because you're going to see more and more enemies. And with the longer the chapter is and the more enemies you have, the more your sanity is going to get drained. And the lower it gets, the more your character will start to hallucinate, like I talked about before. And that's not really a problem. It's actually more entertaining. The problem comes in that as soon as your sanity meter is completely gone or depleted, they will instead drain your health directly. And when that's depleted, well, of course, then you're dead. So part of this challenge, especially some of the later chapters, is to make sure that as few enemies as possible spot you, so they don't drain your sanity. For the most part, they are, completely in the way, and there's no way to avoid being looked at. But we can be clever in some areas later on to avoid taking that sanity loss. So here is a weapon called the blowgun, a ranged weapon, which we have to pick up because it does open up this little trap and you fall down to the bottom floor. But of course, we will not be using it.
A secret passage in the temple.
Here's a friendly NPC who is attacked by blue zombies, also known as Ulioth zombies. And if you defeat them and talk to the guy, he can repair your sword, but we're just gonna skip that completely, because that would imply defeating the enemies. And what's interesting is that with friendly NPCs, you have the ability to hurt them or kill them if you want to, and that is another way to decrease your sanity. And there's your health bar, right there, the red one. So the game is trying to teach you careful movement here with all of these traps. Reminds me a lot of Prince of Persia. The classic 2D games, but they're 3D instead. That's how I thought about it as a kid playing this game. And over here we have the ancient Narokath god. But like I said, I'm not gonna explain too much about the story. So I was recording this whole challenge on a stream, which does mean you can see the chat sometimes in the bottom left corner. And also I did my best to edit everything to make it as seamless as possible. So you could see some jump cuts here and there. I tried to cut out some cutscenes whenever I, stand still or pause the game to talk to the chat. Or maybe if I take multiple attempts, like I use save states for some sections. Then I just try to edit out those failed attempts and make everything one seamless, continuous playthrough. But it can be a little bit jumpy in some parts, and I do apologize for that. It took quite some time. And as you can tell, the different types of zombies, or like their different affinities, they can become enemies and attack each other, which is good for us. They don't bother us as much. And if enemies defeat or kill themselves, like you saw with that Narokath zombie in this room, activating a trap and then dying, that doesn't violate any of the rules. I mean, we can avoid it if we want, but it doesn't really matter that much. And in some cases it's very useful that enemies can take each other out, because we're gonna see some very narrow corridors, and we can't get past. We're getting body blocked by the zombies, and so if they can take each other out, that can allow us to get some more space. Here I'm fast forwarding when I'm just walking. I try to do that with drawn out segments just to speed them up a little bit. And that is the end of Ellia's chapter. And a little bit more challenging than Pious' chapter, but nothing too scary. So Ellia gets a pass. Alright, welcome to the third chapter of the game. We are playing as Anthony in the cathedral. And now we're being transported to the tome room. Not gonna explain it too much, but this is where you get the Tome of Eternal Darkness, which is basically the catalyst for magic casting. And that is something this chapter will touch upon for the first time, is the usage of magic and its runes system. And we'll explain that as we get to it. And this is one of my favorite chapters in the game. I don't know if it is the cathedral itself, but it has a very nice mix of this calm, exploring, talking to different characters, and then moving into the more dark and sinister portion with enemies, and you can even see here in this casket.
Oh my god, what is it?
What happened? This devil's work. We should get out of here.
So we receive his main weapon, the Skrakbasax. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but we will not be using it. So opening that casket allows us to head up to the second floor and grab our first circle of power. And in the intro cutscene of this chapter, Anthony was unfortunately cursed by a magical scroll. And throughout this chapter you will see him get more and more affected by it. And slowly he becomes an undead. So this circle of power has 3 points on it, which means you put 3 different runes and that will make a spell. And depending on what runes you place, you get different spells. I guess I forgot to cut that part out. And so this Narokath zombie, also known as Green Zombie, has a rune inside of him, which means we do have to defeat him to get that rune. The green zombies are regarded as the weakest, and so they die pretty easily. I do believe you deal more damage by punching the head. So we're doing that. We get our first rune. But we can't make a spell with just one rune, so we are moving on. Here the game shows you that you can use fire to burn up carpets to reveal a new passageway. And we do need to pick up this torch to illuminate the room and pick up these shards of the green urn. And the game will teach you about mixing items or combining them. And then also we can use magic to repair it. And there is our second rune. You can use the torch on the zombies as you saw in the cutscene, but we will not be doing that. We'll just punch everything. Now, runes on their own cannot be understood. They're just, a question mark. And you can learn about them by picking up a codex, which is like a white slab of rock or stone that tells you what the rune is and what it stands for. But that is an optional item. You can see it right there to the right. We will not be picking up any of those. And here I'm gonna speed up the gameplay portion because we're mixing the different shards. So there we broke the blue urn and got our, third rune in this case. And then we can make a spell called Enchant Item, which can be used to repair stuff. Which we did to restore those urns to a working state. And then we fill them up with water, so they weigh more, which will be important in a room coming up. This is one of those rooms which are pretty narrow. So I'm trying to lure the zombie into that position so you can run around it at that turn. And on the table there you can see a scroll which will explain that magic, and that is enchant item right there. If you don't have those scrolls, you don't know, or the game doesn't tell you what the magic does. You just cast it and you have to see for yourself. So there's a lot of exploring in this game in regards to the magic system, which I found to be very engaging as a kid. You get the new rune and then you can play around with it and experiment. So you can mix these different runes, and if you get something that matches, it will just say you unlocked spell 3 or spell 5. But you have no idea what the spells do unless you have the scroll and then maybe, the codex for each rune. So here we have a forced encounter. We need to defeat this undead monk to grab his key. And he's one of those enemies that drain your sanity more than once. So I call it ticking sanity damage, so which means you want to either defeat the enemy as quickly as possible to minimize the sanity loss, or just not be looked at. So you can hide behind something to break their line of sight. But we don't need to minimax this chapter so much, because Anthony has a big advantage with this curse that you see in front of you. He can't die, so even if you lose all of your health, you will be restored back to life. Or, depending on how you see it, of course. But I try my best not to let that happen, because if you do restore your health, that does break rule number 1, which is healing. But the chapter isn't that long, so I didn't have to, minimax that sanity loss. Here's our first trapper enemy. They are blind, but very sensitive to hearing, so you can use sneak like this by holding the X button, and they can't hear you. But if you accidentally walk into it or touch it, it will detonate, so to speak. It will cast out a big wave of magic, and it will teleport you to a different area. But in doing so, the trapper will also die, which breaks the pacifist rule. So we're not allowed to make any trapper detonate, so to speak. And here you have some of those sanity effects. The first one you saw over there was that the game shut off, and this one, it puts you upside down. And I included those in the video because I want to show a little bit of what the sanity system implies. So you can see our meter in the top left. Our sanity is completely drained, and so these hallucinations can happen. And another thing is that the background music changes when your sanity is low. It's usually, dark ambience, and depending on which chapter and area you are in, that ambience is different. For the most part, the game has this droning dark ambience with crying children and screaming women, which, they sound very cool and they add to the tense and the dread and everything. But when doing a challenge like this, and where you're very often at low sanity, it gets pretty annoying listening to that all the time. So for this playthrough, I edited or rearranged the music. So instead of hearing that low sanity music, you're instead hearing something that's more, easy to listen to. Here is our very first horror enemy. When you stand close to them, they build up this shock, which they later, let loose upon you. And they attack pretty hard, but they're also a bit slow in between each attack. They have 3 heads, which you can decapitate with a weapon. But since we all have punching or fists, then nothing really happens. We're just dealing damage. Now this horror in particular has less health, I believe, than our other horrors in the game later on. And that's, I guess, to make it a little bit easier on you. This blue variant, the Ellia horror, can drain your magic when it hits you, as you saw there. So yeah, you have different effects depending on the different types of enemies or their infinity. You have 4 different. Those are like the purple Mantarok zombies. And then you have the red, green, and blue as well. So that was the end of Anthony's chapter. And once again, we're going to head over to the screen. And Anthony gets a big, nice, clear mark. Alright, moving on to chapter 4. We are playing as Karim in the Forbidden City, which is the same location Pious was in. Karim starts with the Tulwar, which we will immediately unequip, and heading to this ladder will take you to the Tome room, where we pick up the Tome of Eternal Darkness, which allows us to cast Magick. Now this chapter's main focus is combat. There will be a lot of enemy encounters, many of which we have to defeat the enemies by punching, of course. But there will also be a lot of sanity loss from each enemy looking at us. So we need to do our very best to avoid being spotted. This room has a statue we need to pick up, but also a zombie we need to defeat. And so there is really no way to defeat the zombie and not have all of these other zombies look at you and drain your sanity. And you also saw a little jump cut behind there, so I am using, save states to try to beat it as effectively as possible in terms of our resources, not in time. So there you can see right there, is using save and load state. This is what you would call a low TAD in the speedrunning community, a low optimized tool assisted demonstration. So the point isn't to go fast or anything. This is more like a demonstration of what is possible within the game's limits. And so we place the first statue over there. There's a torch, but it is not required to beat the chapter, so we will not pick it up. You have 3 zombies in this room, and I think I dodge 1 of them. So I do get my sanity drained by 2 out of 3. But yeah, the gameplay might be a little bit jittery sometimes. I might stand still, it might jump cut a little bit with the save states and loads. And yeah, like I said, that's because I was recording it live, talking to chat, and some people know me that I have a hard time focusing on the game and talk at the same time. Mainly because English isn't my native language, and so I have to, be careful with the pronunciations and everything. Here is a second Tulwar, which allows you to dual wield, but of course we shall not be picking it up. This room is a little bit tricky. You have two zombies. The first one saw me. He drained my sanity. But the second one, who is on the left right now, has not spotted me yet. And so he hasn't drained my sanity. And so I'm trying to lure him over to that corner and minimize that sanity loss. And we will be returning to that room. So I need to make sure he doesn't see me as soon as I get back in there. Here is our second horror in the game. And he has, well, me inside of him. That is the Narokath room. And that's where my name on the internet, my artist name and everything, it came from that rune, Narokath. And it stands for absorb. Now, fighting these horrors punching only, especially now when we need to minimax our resources, is pretty difficult. So there will be a lot of jump cutting. And I even skip ahead here because this takes quite a while, quite some time. So I run up, punch, run away, avoid the shock damage, avoid getting hit, save state, and load if I fail. And with enough punches, the horror goes down. And normally you would be able to, use a finishing move and get your sanity back, a huge chunk of it. But we can't do that with our fists, and even if we could, that would violate rule number 1. I do believe I explained that before, but yeah. This room now, for some reason, has a trapper inside of it. We need to be careful and not let him die by detonating that magical teleport. So we're just sneaking by. But we do need to be careful that if this of the zombies, because if they attack you from behind, they can grab you and, yeah, suck your life out. Now this room is very, very challenging. Once you pick up that sword in the middle, you'll be locked inside of here and you have to fight 4 waves of enemies, I believe. And the game wants you to use that new beefy sword that is extremely powerful, but yeah, as you can see, we are not allowed to use that sword, and so we are resorting to punching only. And yeah, I will be speeding this up, so just punching. Sometimes the zombies will punch themselves, which helps moving it along a little bit faster. But we don't have a time limit at all. So as long as we don't get hit, it's fine. But yeah, as you can see, our sanity meter in the top left has been completely drained, and every time an enemy looks at us now, it drains our health. These green zombies, they go down in 2 punches, so pretty simple. But they do get up on their feet again if you don't use a finishing move. Luckily, you just have to get them down twice for them to disappear entirely. If that wasn't the case, then yeah, that would have been bad. Then we have to finish them. And that would violate rule number 1 of restoring sanity. So this zombie has the green rune, a Celatoth. Once we defeat him, we get that. And these 2 other zombies, they have a new enemy inside of them called the Bone Thief. And they are pretty scary, especially in this challenge, because they're very low in height. And so our punches will miss. It will go above them. You can't aim down and punch. So what I'm focusing on here is getting rid of the zombie first to get the Celatoth rune. And now I'm trying to get the Bone Thieves to attack each other, as you can see here. They're body blocking each other. I'm trying to punch it, but like I said, it goes above. But we can pretty simply take out one of them by just having, yeah, one of them attack the other. But when it's a one-on-one like it is now, I thought to myself, well, maybe we can't go further than this. And I took a hit there, used load state. But fortunately, there are stairs in this room. And so we can have the Bone Thief on a little bit of a higher elevation. And whenever it is doing that swiping attack, it does raise its body a little bit. So if we time it carefully, as you can see here, we can hit it. So this fight is pretty difficult without any, saves or loads. You have to do everything without getting hit once. But with some practice, it should be doable, without save states. But yeah, we did it. We beat this room. We have very low health. And yeah, we'll just see how far can Karim go before it's game over. I was surprised to make it through that room because of how many enemies there were. So when you're on low health, your character will start to limp. Or limp, yeah. And you move slowly. very slowly. And so that makes this room a little bit tricky now, because remember that one of those zombies hasn't seen us yet. And when it does, for the first time, it will drain our sanity. And we need to use the new Narokath rune to enchant our blade to open up the door to the right. And I have to use some very careful positioning here to get over to this door, use the sword, and go through without that one zombie looking at us. And that took a lot of time. There was a lot of save states and loads. And I was very excited to see that you can make it through there. If that, you can see our health, just like a pixel left. If that zombie saw us in that room, we would have been dead here. But thanks to avoiding him, we can make it one room further in this challenge with Karim. And this is, unfortunately, where Karim's journey ends. There is a horror in this room, and as soon as he sees you, he will drain your health and you're dead. So to my knowledge, this is as far as Karim can make it in this challenge. So we tried using something called the talisman, which is an item that Karim starts with. It's a healing spell as an item. Here's a funny sanity effect where it kills you instead. So we allowed ourselves to use the talisman. So we're not breaking the magic rule, but we did break rule number 1, which is no healing. And you have 5 charges. And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here, but there's gonna be one last enemy encounter with several waves of enemies. Starting with the Mantrok zombies. And of course, all of them will drain your health every time they look at you. And we're gonna skip ahead here to the final enemy of this gauntlet, which is a Narokath horror, which we did manage to beat, but we had to use all 5 charges of the talisman. But it is possible. If you're allowed to heal yourself 5 times with the talisman, you can beat it. But it does break rule number 1. And that will spawn the artifact, and we can collect it and end Karim's chapter. So, of course, Karim will be the first character / chapter which is impossible with this challenge. We are now in chapter 5, and we are playing as Maximilian Roivas, who is the ancestor of this game's main protagonist, Alexandra Roivas, who you play as in between each chapter in this very mansion. But we're not including that because we're only looking at the chapters themselves. And Alex is mainly just going around this mansion, exploring, solving puzzles, and looking for the next chapter page. So it's not very interesting in the challenge itself. But Max is here 240 years before Alexandra. And there is plenty of challenge to be had in this chapter. We move into this secret room. We pick up the Tome of Eternal Darkness. And that will unleash our first horror in the main hall, who has a rune inside of him, which means we have to defeat it. There are 2 weapons Max can use. The gun to the left, and there's a sword on the right there, but we are only using our fists. So another horror fight coming up here. It's pretty tough because Maximilian's run speed is far slower than Karim's or even Anthony's. Or maybe not Anthony's, because he's like pretty undead at that point. So, but in any case, Max's run speed is pretty slow. So you need to make sure you're not staying too close to this horror, because as you do, the shock builds up and then ultimately hurts you. So you need to go a step away from him to reset the charge build-up. And so I did a little bit of cutting there, because you need to punch him many, many times. But yeah, move in, punch, move out, and then repeat. Doing it without taking any damage is pretty tough, so I did use save states. But it's like a careful dance, and if you learn it, you can probably do this without any save states. I have yet to do it. Maybe I'll try it at some point. But like I said, this is mainly a demonstration to see what is possible without any real like game-breaking cheats or glitches. So with that rune in hand, we're heading over here to grab a letter, which contains the basement key. We're getting chased by a bone thief, but we have like the same run speed, so it's fine. Heading back into the main hall puts us in this like hallucination state. And going down either of these staircases will spawn a horror on the opposite side, which also has a rune inside of him. So we need to defeat this one. This time it's a Chichurga or a red horror. Gameplay wise, there is really no difference. Maybe it has more health, but the dance, so to speak, is still exactly the same. So we move in, punch, move out, reset the shock build-up, and take advantage of the long delay the horror has between each attack, which is very fortunate that it does have such a long delay. After enough punches, we get our third and final colored rune, or infinity rune, however you want to call it. And we can head over to this side and use a new spell called Reveal Invisible. And to the left there you can see like the affinity weaknesses and strengths. So green is weak to red. And so we're using Reveal Invisible Red to reveal this door and then open up this letter to get the basement key. But here I forgot to grab the pump handle, which is on the opposite side of the mansion. So we're heading over there real quick. And this room has a trapper in front of us, so we need to sneak on by. The maid is just moving on, not really carrying. I don't know if she can even see them or hear them. The music you're hearing in the background is called Black Rose in the official soundtrack, but in the game's files it's called ED Theme. It stands for Eternal Darkness Theme. So I guess it's considered the main theme of this game. And unfortunately you can only hear it in this chapter. But as soon as your sanity goes low, or you start those horror encounters, the music goes away. And you don't really hear it that much. It's a pretty long track. And so the odds of someone hearing the whole thing in a casual playthrough, it's pretty slim. Unless you go around the entire mansion and explore before shit hits the fan. But yeah, I want to give a shout out to that track because it's a masterpiece. It was composed by Steve Hennifin, who passed away 2019. So rest in peace, Steve. You made some incredible music. Here we have a Mantrock zombie, pretty tall. And he has another rune inside of him, which we need. You're gonna see this rune barrier for the most part. I think it's always there to make sure you actually get the rune so you don't get soft locked later. But down here we have the last room of Max's chapter, and it is effectively a boss fight or introducing a tough enemy. And this is the Narokath Lesser Guardian or just Guardian, depending on how you see it. It begins by casting a damaged field spell, which is a barrier, so we can't escape. Now, there's a very interesting thing here. Depending on which affinity you chose, or ancient you chose, with Pious Augustus in the very first chapter, it will determine, which of these guardians you face here, as well as many other enemies in the game. But the problem, as you can see here, the Narokath Guardian has a very low stature, very similar to the Bone Thieves, and so we can't really punch it. It's not good. Sometimes you can. You can't move it around without hitting it with a weapon to make it teleport away. So we can't place it near a staircase or anything. So this is a very annoying guardian to fight with fists only. And so we're swapping over to Ellia instead, which is this tall squid-like creature, which means we can actually punch it. So this is one of the only times where picking, the correct ancient has a pretty substantial effect on the gameplay. I believe you can still defeat that green, Narokath Guardian, but it's way, way tougher because you can see right here how many punches it takes to take him down. And you have to be a little bit lucky that it doesn't cast, you know, barrier spells or shield spells and stuff like that. But we just keep on punching it, avoiding the magical attacks, and finally it goes down. And that is the end of Max's chapter. So, a little bit challenging, but it was possible. So Max gets a pass. Returning to the temple where we played as Ellia, we are now playing as Edwin Lindsey. Very Indiana Jones-esque with his design and all the booby traps and artifacts we're gonna find. Here we have a new enemy called Gatekeeper, I believe, and it deals ticking sanity damage. So as long as you remain in its line of sight, it will tick your sanity down. Fortunately, there is a bunch of barriers or walls in this room, and it moves pretty slowly. So we're trying to lure it around here so we can do our business without it looking at us at all. Normally, you would have to, you know, defeat it so you can use the brush here, because if it is too close, you can't do it. But you just lure it away, and you can use your brush and get that bronze bracelet. Speeding this up so the gatekeeper goes over to that corner. We need to run over here and use our bracelet to open up the door so we can get out of here. All while trying to avoid being in its line of sight. So we're running back over to the right side, using some saves and loads. And there we made it out without taking a single tick of sanity damage. This chapter will be very challenging. It's a considerable step up from Ellia's run through in this place. It's the same location, yes, but it has way more enemies and traps, which means more sanity loss. Equipping the torch just to illuminate the area to see these pressure plates a little bit easier. Doesn't break any of the rules, as long as we don't attack with it. The trapper killed itself by going on the pressure plate. And that doesn't violate any rule either. I need to pick up this metal bracelet for later. You can use the brush on all of these webs to discover optional items like codex. We're not gonna get that, of course. This room has a horror trapped, I guess you could say, in a damage field barrier spell, which we need to dispel, but we cannot do it as of now. So we just go in there, grab the bronze necklace, and we get out. Okay, heading back into this room with the gatekeeper. Not sure where it is, but just hoping that it doesn't enter our line of sight. Now this gives you an option to go either right or left in this room, and going to the right we have to do for this first room. This is where we get the silver bracelet and then use the metal bracelet to replace it. It's a very typical, you know, replace the treasure with a fake treasure. But then you can continue in this hallway, but that does mean going through extra zombies, and they will drain your sanity. So I instead opt to head back this way where the zombies have already seen us, and so they won't drain our sanity anymore. This red guy just did it, but I don't think it is avoidable. He will make quick work of that Mantrock zombie. You can see I'm a bit confused sometimes. It's been quite some time since I played this game, so I didn't know it inside and out. But I did use to speedrun it. I got second place in the 80% speedrun. I'm currently sitting at third place. And it is a very beloved childhood game of mine. So I do return to it from time to time. And for this Halloween, I thought it would be fun to try out a different challenge. Alright, in this room we have plenty of Chichurga zombies, and one of them, as you can see, has a rune inside of him, so we need to unequip our torch and get punching. Or we can just let them attack each other, but we're trying to speed up the process a little bit at least. We need to make sure that we don't face our back towards them, because then they will grab us and deal damage. So we need to make sure we're always like facing them until they initiate their attacking animation, which is pretty slow and kind of funny looking the more you stare at it. So this is an instance where picking a different ancient would have been easier. I'm not sure which ancient you would pick here to get the green zombies, which are considered the weakest. But since we don't have a time limit and they don't drain, you know, more sanity than any other zombie, from what I know, we're just rolling with it. So we only punched the one zombie we had to defeat. I sure hope so. I don't think I punched any of the other zombies, but at least we didn't directly defeat them. If they take out each other, it's fine. But we need to take out the main guy and get this rune. And with that, we can learn the dispel magic, so we can, dispel this damage field. I'm cutting out the magic crafting segment and just keeping the gameplay portion here. And here I really thought the horror was gonna see me, but he didn't. So I kind of panicked running out here and run through again, and he still didn't see me. He didn't drain my sanity, which is very fortunate. You will see later. Because the horrors, they do drain a lot of sanity. Using both silver accessories, we can open up this pathway and head further down. Here is another zombie with a rune inside of him. And there's also a gatekeeper at the bottom. So we want to defeat the zombie before that gatekeeper comes up and starts ticking our sanity down. So here's another good example of using a different ancient. So you fight the green dudes instead. Here I'm not really sure what I was thinking. Because I'm letting the gatekeeper tick my sanity down a little bit. And now I'm moving back up here to avoid the line of sight. Yeah, I'm hoping that other zombie attacks the rune zombie. And for whatever reason, even if they're both on the same team, so to speak, they're still attacking each other. Or at least the gatekeeper is. Whenever it attacks an enemy, including you, it will allow it to cast magic, like summoning creatures. So it's the only enemy in the game that can only cast magic after attacking. We have more traps. Take it easy. A big horror which drains all of sanity. Can't avoid that. Luckily he's far enough away from this web, which we do need to use the brush on to get that necklace. We don't have to deal with this magical symbol in the way. That is for an optional rune. Here's another instance of where I have replaced the background music. Whenever you have low sanity in this temple, you have that kind of dark ambience with some chanting in the background. And it gets old pretty quickly since we're spending most of our time in low sanity. And so I replaced it with the track called The Gift of Forever in the official soundtrack. In the game's files, this track is called Veil. I like to be a little bit extra nerdy and use the in-game, file names for the music, but hey. In this room, there's an unavoidable pressure plate that emits poisonous gas, which takes your health. We need to run past as fast as we can to avoid that. And in here, I do believe, there's a Mantrock zombie, and he hasn't seen us yet, which means the sanity hasn't been drained. And so we need to use this acid and turn the necklace into a gold necklace. And then get out of this room without the zombie seeing us. And I spent several minutes here with save states trying to get out of here before it sees me. But as you can see right there, it drained some of my health. And I don't think it's possible to make it through. But fortunately, the Mantrock zombies, they drain very little sanity / health. So it's not a big deal. There I edited out a little bit of sanity effects. Some more zombies, but we don't have to defeat them this time. There is a horror downstairs. Whenever you're far away from it, it does that stomp and sends out a ranged magical attack, which is pretty easy to just run past. But still, the horror will spot us and drain our health. And now we are on the final level or floor of this chapter, but as you can see, there are many enemies and many traps, and we need to conserve our health as much as possible, because we are not out of this yet. And as soon as your health is low, he will start to limp around. Pretty narrow gap between these pressure plates, so I did fail that once or twice. I had to use save states. Even more zombies. Don't think we can avoid all of them looking at us and draining health. But we're doing good so far. We're still able to run. Unavoidable pressure plate here for these crushing walls. But yeah, just run past. And here I do believe is the final room with enemies. Or is it the second to last? But it does have a rune inside of one of these zombies, so we need to take him out. It is a green zombie, so just a couple of punches and it's out. A little bit of awkward fight here, but we make it through. Sorry about the mouse cursor there. So we grab the rune, which allows us to leave the room. You never have to cast the summon spell in this chapter to clear it, but you do need to pick it up for later chapters. And that's why that rune barrier is in the way. Here's our last booby trap room of the chapter. Dodge those darts. A bunch of blades coming up here. And as you can tell, our health is low, so we're moving way slower now. And coming up is the last room with enemies. In my first run through of this chapter, I didn't have enough health to make it through this room. And I thought for a second that maybe it was impossible, just barely impossible to make it through with Lindsey. But with some clever dodging, with the gatekeeper in the beginning mainly, we do have enough health to make it through. And so you can see in the bottom left, we don't have a lot of health left at all. Sanity is completely drained, but now there are no more enemies, and this is the final room. So Lindsey's chapter is barely possible with some clever dodging of sanity loss. If you just run through it mindlessly, you will not make it through that final room. But stuff like this makes a challenge very interesting for me, because it's constantly hopping back and forth. Is it possible? Is it not? And when you finally do solve it, like I do here, you get such a wonderful feeling. But that is the end of Lindsey's chapter. And there's Ellia. And so, going back to this screen, we can conclude that Lindsey's chapter is indeed possible, just barely. Okay, welcome back to the cathedral, where we played as Anthony, but now we are Paul Luther. Chapter 7, and we have access to the main place of the cathedral. And this is easily my favorite chapter in the game, for various reasons. There is something about the cathedral aesthetic that really speaks to me. The music and ambience, the characters and the story and the pacing. Everything makes for a fantastic chapter. And our goal is to find 3 diary pages and a book to get a dagger, and then we can later clear the chapter. But it's a pretty big chapter overall. It spawns a huge area compared to the other chapters. And our first enemy is a simple Mantrock zombie in front of this door, and I tried to go over here to maybe avoid the sanity loss, but I quickly deemed that to be impossible, since we need to go back and forth several times. So I just took the sanity loss and we move on. We ring this bell, get a cutscene with the custodian, and he gives us the old tower key, which we'll be needing. And I will be editing out all of it as we are focusing on the gameplay only. There is a bit of running around in this chapter, and when you run for too long, your character will start to lose their breath, and you can stand still to let them, catch their breath, or you can just keep on running at a slower pace. But this is easily fixed with the new summon rune we got in Lindsey's chapter, so you can cast Magick Pool with the red Chichurga alignment, which effectively gives you infinite running stamina. So I highly recommend that if you're doing a casual playthrough and you get tired of your characters losing their breath all the time. I wish I knew that as a kid early. My first couple of playthroughs I did without the Magick Pool. So this is the area Anthony was in, and we need to go in this room where he passed away. And he has something in his right eye socket which we need, so it's gonna be a fist fight to the death, and it's gonna last for quite some time, so we shall be speeding it up. Now, an interesting fact here is that depending on which weapon you had when you finished Anthony's chapter, he will use that against you here, I believe. So if you have the two-handed sword, which you can find, he will use that against you in this room. But since we didn't use any weapon at all, he's just using his fists, which is good for us. So we're just running around him, punching him in the head over and over and over until he is finally down. Using a couple of save states here and there, just in case I take a punch. I find it pretty funny that he spends so much time punching him over and over, and then he sits here, prays and laments his death. It's kind of a funny contrast. And there we go. There's our first gem, the ruby. We need 3 gems to make progress. So there's a lot of items, a lot of key items in this chapter. Up here there's a bone thief, which I tried to, avoid losing my sanity to. Grabbing the sheet of music. Forgot to pick it up, lose my sanity. And then I used the save state to get down here. But then I realized that, oh, there's another item we need to get. And so I just accepted my fate. We take the sanity damage. We're already out of sanity. Oh, never mind. This is actually cut to a later portion of this chapter. Just to show you that there are 2 key items in that room. We're not that low on health and sanity yet. So I'm sorry if that is confusing. I had to run back there later on to grab that diary page. So that even confused me for a little moment there with the editing. But yeah, 2 key items we need to get there, and I forgot one of them. But yeah, I do believe you can't make it through. Get both of those key items without the bone thief seeing you. So we take the damage. Use the sheet of music to play the organ, which opens up this cabinet for whatever reason. We get our 5-point circle of power. And that allows us to cast Magick, yeah, with 5 runes. Letting Paul catch his little breath here. Over here, there's a torch to the left, which I didn't know about for the longest time, but you don't need to pick it up, so we will leave it. In the chest right there is a crossbow, but also not gonna take that. But we do need the podium key to get a chapter, a diary page. There's going to be a bit of jump cutting here, because I remember in the stream a lot of stuff was happening. We were talking about some topics, and someone even called me. So I'm on the phone right now as I'm playing, and that's why I'm just walking. But then we also catch our breath, so it doesn't really matter. So cutting that out and moving on. In this room we have 2 trappers, I believe. And this wine casket over here is hollow. We turn it and that will open up this door. No questions asked. And since we have a fixed camera angle, we can't really see these trappers. So we need to be very careful that we don't sneak into them. Because remember, if you touch them, they will instantly detonate and transport you to the trapper dimension. And effectively killing themselves, which we will not allow. All right, here we have another horror which we need to defeat. And it has the blue gem inside of him. So lots of save states and loads here to make sure we deal damage while avoiding taking damage. It's the same dance as before. Run in, punch, run away, reset the shock, build up. It's kind of crazy how close this is to not being possible with the punching only. If the shock buildup was a little bit faster, it would have hit us every time. If the horror didn't have as much of a delay between his attacks, it wouldn't have been possible to do that. So it's interesting to see. And now with all of the gems on deck, we can just place them in here. And we can continue further down. Lots of enemies in this chapter, and as we will see soon when our sanity is completely drained, Paul's health meter is pretty short. And that's something you may have noticed, that the different characters have their strengths and weaknesses. And Paul's weakness is that he's low on health. His sanity is kind of medium, so he's got that at least. And he's one of those characters that spawns with, or starts with an item that allows you to restore your sanity, a meditation rod. But that will, of course, break rule number 1 of not allowed to heal or restore anything. So now we're out of our sanity, and our health will start to drain, as you can see in the bottom left corner. When enemies drain, he doesn't have a lot. So it was kind of spooky already, because there are a lot of enemies in this chapter. This hallway, yep, it's pretty tight with the traffic. So I'm letting this right Mantrock zombie hit the left one, in hopes that we can just pass through him. Because the collision stops blocking us as soon as they drop down to the floor. We can get through without killing it ourselves. I know we indirectly caused that zombie's death, but it's still... It should be fine, you know? This room was actually very tricky. I had to reload it many times. I got stuck there. But just luring the zombie to the left and then running around. Well, yeah. Made it possible. Same thing here. Just trying to squeeze up to the wall so we can run around. Same thing again. If they're in the middle of the room or yeah, the path, you can't make it through. Need to go through this room again with one zombie, but with this turn over here, there's like a wider area you can move around, but I kind of failed that, so I need to just lure him towards the wall, and then we can move on. Here I believe, yeah, these two horrors are fighting it out, so I don't think both have seen us, only one of them. And now when we have that diary page, we are backtracking up to the custodian to report back. We also picked up a book in one of the rooms before, I forgot to mention that, which is needed to beat the chapter. At least I'm fairly certain you have to pick up that book. Another sanity effect there, hence the screaming, but we're cutting it out to just get a nice flow of the gameplay. So lots of running around, pretty long backtrack now that you think of it. You need to go all the way down to that altar, grab the diary page, while also grabbing the other pages and the book. And then run all the way back up to the custodian in the old tower, in the clock tower, or bell tower. So I guess that could be considered this chapter's weak point, is the mandatory backtracking. So right there, I forgot to. I remembered that I forgot to pick up the diary page. So I went back to that old tower where the bone thief was and grabbed it. So I'm sorry once again if that was a little bit confusing. But yeah, we cut back to when we're running back up to the bell tower. And same thing here with the low sanity. I did replace that dark ambience with the psalm, it's called in the official soundtrack, with that pretty lovely chorus. So even more running. In hindsight, I should have sped this up a little bit. And now we are at that point where, yeah, we're moving at snail's pace and we're losing even more health. There's a bone thief. And here I was dreading the rest of the chapter because, yeah, we're not done yet and there are more enemies to be seen. So I was debating with myself, is it possible? We'll just see how far we can make it. And then see if we can look at any, like, handicap. For example, with Karim, we allowed ourselves to use the talisman to heal ourselves, and then it was possible. And with Paul here, you could use his meditation rod to fully restore your sanity, allowing you to get past even more enemies. So new enemies have spawned on top of the old ones. So we have trappers and zombies in this room. And I found it to be easiest just to lure them over to this corner. And so they don't like clog up the path here. Which they kind of do right now. I don't want to touch the trapper. I can't go left. I just have to wait it out and maybe let them kill each other. But there we go. We went around. One of the zombies go down. The camera is a little bit against us, so we can't see the other trapper. There it is. Need to avoid taking damage from the zombie, of course. But after a few attempts, we made it through. Now we have trappers in this room. No big deal. We have a big area to move around in. And as long as we're sneaking, they don't know anything. Editing out another sanity effect there. You know, maybe I regret editing out some of them because, you know, I don't know if any of you watching this right now, if this is your first time seeing this game or first time in a long time. And these sanity effects, they could be considered the star of the show. It is definitely this game's most unique aspect. And Nintendo even patented that sanity system for 20 years, I believe. And they never really did anything with it, which is very weird. And so it kind of recently got released out into the public. So if you're making a game, you can straight up copy this sanity system. I'm very interested, honestly, to see if games will implement it. You have seen some games in the past to be influenced by the sanity system, namely Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I'm just letting these guys fight it out. The bone thief doesn't really stand a chance. So now the red horror is coming after us, and with our movement speed, this is really sketchy, but we need to make it over to this statue. Use the dagger we got from the custodian, which opens up this pathway. He is running towards us, but his attack animation is pretty slow. Unfortunately, he stands still whenever he attacks. Would have been really bad if he can move and attack at the same time. Getting kind of cornered here, but just barely make it through. The shock doesn't build up enough to deal damage to us, and so we made it through. Here we have a 5-point barrier, so we're using our 5-point circle of power we picked up earlier to use a 5-point dispel magic, so we can get through here. And there he is, our only friend in this endeavor. And then we have a masterpiece of a cutscene, but we are skipping it. And we are facing 2 bone thieves. We are dangerously low on HP. If it was 3 bone thieves, we would have been dead right here. And I just barely dodged that attack, and now we're just getting out. Hoping that they won't catch up and attack us. But as you can see here, whenever they initiate their attack, they stand still. And if it wasn't for that, we would have been dead right here, because they catch up to us pretty quickly. But as soon as they're close enough, they need to initiate their attack, and it has, they stand still, it has a startup. And so we can make it through, even with that snail's pace. We can make it out without fighting them. And then this horror is also pretty close. And just like that, we are in the clear. There are no more enemies in this chapter. If there were just one zombie in this room, or the next one, or another bone thief somewhere, it would have been impossible. So this is like the pinnacle of this challenge, in my opinion. Paul Luther's chapter is possible under these 5 restrictions. You can read them once again in the bottom left. It is incredible. It is just barely possible. And I was riding a wave of dopamine right there. And that is the end of Paul Luther's chapter. And so we can put a nice green check mark on him. We once again find ourselves back in the Forbidden City. And today we are Roberto Bianchi. And our goal is to survey several spots in this place and then make it back out. Now, this is very likely my least favorite chapter in the game because of Roberto's attributes. He has very low sanity and magic stat. He is slow, and he also tires pretty easily. But like I said in Paul Luther's chapter, if you have that magic pool with Chichurga, the red power, you never run out of stamina. But as you can see, his max running speed isn't really that fast. It's like a slight half jog. But in the any percent speed run, you can actually skip this chapter completely. But it requires a very tough trick to pull off, from what I've understood. So in my speedrun, I still played through his chapter. He does have a couple of interesting glitches if you do play his chapter. But for this challenge with the no glitches restriction, it's kind of boring. We're running through most rooms, surveying all of these spots, and using magic whenever the game forces us to. Over at this ladder, we're getting back to the tome room to get the eternal darkness, so we can begin casting magic. And yeah, we can see a few new areas of the Forbidden City as Roberto, so it isn't just copy and pasted. The same exact area. Some trappers here, pretty simple. You can run without any danger, but when they're glowing like that and you run, then they detonate. But if they're not glowing, you can run. There's no problem. They get a bit annoyed at you, but it's fine. There's a gatekeeper on that side of the room. Fortunately, he did not see us. Although we do have a horror in here, and it will definitely be draining our sanity a fair bit. And there's nothing we can do to avoid that. There are two horrors, by the way, but I think only one of them saw us. So that right there is a clue that we need to get a zombie to step in there so we can reopen the door. We can also step in there ourselves, but then we're dead. So we need to cast a summoning zombie, which we'll be doing shortly. But first we're heading over to this room where we can survey. And as soon as we do so, these humans will start to attack us because they have been taken over by bone thieves. But we can just run out. It's a pretty creepy scene. Still to this day, it's kind of creepy. That scared me quite a lot as a kid. That noise and them just walking at you in that way. And there's something very unsettling about it. Two trappers in this room. Camera is not being nice to us. We just is taking tiny steps to make sure we're not stepping on them. And then in this room we need to cast a 5-point reveal invisible spell to reveal a bridge so we can run over and grab the key. And once again I'm skipping the magic menu. Just casting the spell, grabbing the key, get out. I don't think this horror sees us. There's a big battle in this room between red and green. So we're not gonna pay any attention to them. There's a little statue, effigy on the left there. That is completely optional. And you can only see it if you have the reveal invisible spell on. But most people do, because you have to use it in that room prior to get over and grab the key. So now we're gonna access the doom room of this challenge, because it features our very first yellow shock floor. And when you step on it like this, it will sap you. And I used save states there to optimize, because this shock is running on like a frame rule. It's like every X frame it shocks you. So I'm trying to time it so we're taking as few shocks as possible. And we can make it through, all well and good, or I don't know about that. We lost a lot of health, but we can make it through. There was a sword in the beginning of the chapter, which I usually use to cut this rope, but Roberto starts with a torch, which we can use to burn the rope and get over here. Getting attacked by these worms. I don't know the real name for them, but they do ticking sanity damage, so we want to punch them quickly. Pull this lever so we can get out of this room. And also, most importantly, why we came here in the first place is to survey this area. And this, my friends, is unfortunately where Roberto's chapter ends. There is no way whatsoever to get back here without dying. Because now when our health is low, we are limping and we can't even make it halfway before we're dead. So his challenge ends right here. And so I did a what if scenario if we're breaking one of the rules, which is magic casting. So we're back here now and we're using a 5-point shield spell. Which doesn't stagger us, so we can just run through. Still trying to optimize it so we take as few shock instances as possible. Editing out this room because it's exactly the same. Then we cast a new set of spells. I tried to do it without casting it a second time, but it will not be possible. But casting it 2 times, getting 10 shields in total, makes it so we can survive the rest of the chapter. So you have to break at least one rule to beat Roberto's chapter. But I still want to show at least the end of it. Here we summon a zombie to replicate what happened when we got in here. So just control him, get him crushed, and that will open the door. But for whatever reason, the second time it goes down, it stays down. Never really understood why. Like, in terms of gameplay, I do understand, so you don't accidentally close it again. But in terms of the world's logic, it makes little sense. Maybe it broke, who knows. But this room is kind of annoying. The gatekeeper will attack the Mantrock zombie, allowing it to summon a trapper, which prevents us from running too much. And then the gatekeeper will cause ticking damage. After a brief cutscene, we get the essence of Ellia. And then we survey our final site, and now our goal is to head back to the beginning of the chapter. And here you can see it's ticking my health. And I have to go slow because that trapper's right there. If I run now, it will detonate, so I'm waiting for it to calm down. Or I get far away from it, and then I can run again. And trying to break the line of sight with the gatekeeper to minimize further health drain. Here's the horror again. And with Roberto's movement speed, it's a little bit scary getting through there. But it did a ranged attack, which is pretty easy. Just keep running. Yeah, gatekeeper in this room. He fortunately goes to the middle, so he's not taking any damage. This room was pretty difficult. I had to redo it several times. Because there are now zombies and trappers, and the camera is against you. So we can't really run, and these zombies can catch up to us when we're sneaking. And then they will grab us and bite us, or suck our blood out, or whatever. So I opted to wait in the beginning for them to get over there and then get more room to run around. Crossbow to the left, but no need for that. So we're just backtracking to the beginning. Nothing too interesting anymore. Some new enemy spawns here and there. And with that, his chapter is over. Once you head up this ladder. So, heading back to our character or chapter select screen, we can deduce that Roberto's chapter is indeed impossible thanks to that yellow shock floor. And the only rule I would break would be number 2. That you can use a shield spell to get through it without taking any damage. And then the rest of the chapter is fairly simple and easy. You don't have to fight any horrors. You don't have to fight any enemy at all, except for the worms at that bridge. And so, pretty underwhelming and disappointing. But yeah, that is yet another fail mark. Welcome back to the Cathedral. We are now playing as Peter Jacob in during World War One, and this is one of my favorite chapters. It's once again thanks to the Cathedral, I guess. But not only that, this chapter is quite challenging on a casual playthrough. It's action-packed. The music and atmosphere with the war going on, with the pounding at artillery, and the background music, which in this case I actually did replace. It makes for a fantastic setting and atmosphere. But also, I do think, going back to when I was a kid playing this game, it is the scariest chapter of them all. I remember I freaked out several times. I was so scared I didn't dare continue. So I think the horror element and the survival horror element of this chapter is absolute peak. So we need to go in here, grab the revolver to cause the blackout, get the Tome of Eternal Darkness, and get into this room. Now you have several bone thieves in here, and I don't want to take any sanity loss. So this took several attempts, but heading over to the right, luring that bone thief a little bit. The nurse, who is corrupted or taken over by bone thief, doesn't drain our sanity, fortunately. But the bone thieves do, and so I have to use careful positioning here to make sure none of them see me. We can get over here and go down to the basement, and luckily none of them saw us. You can save that nurse if you go up and punch it quickly enough, but that will make it so we take sanity loss from the bone thieves, and so we will have to let her go. We're heading over here to turn this wheel, and then over to the opposite side, use the lucky penny in like the electrical socket. I don't know what the word is in English, but yeah, and then pull this lever and that will generate power back. This chapter is pretty short if you just beeline to where you need to go constantly, which is what we're doing here. But if you're exploring the areas and dealing with the enemies, it can be fairly longer. And I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere and setting, so I don't recommend rushing through this chapter. But yeah, here we need to summon a trapper to go through this crawl space to warp that guy out of the way. So we can pick up the 7-point circle of power. And you can see me punching doors here. This is like a habit you get from speedrunning this game. Whenever you punch a door when opening it, it makes it so you're facing forward when you're going out. But if you open the door normally, your character will turn around and close it, which adds to the immersion, of course, but then you have to turn around every time. So by punching it, you don't have to turn around. We need to use a 7-point reveal invisible there to reveal the door, which gives this red tint on the screen. And now I'm waiting for the bone thieves to... No, never mind. I'm heading over to the organ first. Luckily, the sheet of music is already here. I think it's a missed opportunity to not have the sheet of music over in the old tower, because you're never required to go back in there. And it's one of my favorite areas in this cathedral, especially during Peter's chapter. It's very freaky what's going on over there. And with the war, pounding outside, it's an unprecedented atmosphere you feel in that old tower. Corrupted nurses and humans. It's very freaky. But yeah, you don't have to go there at all. Here I'm trying to avoid the bone thief from seeing me, and I thought it was impossible. I took several attempts here, running all the way over to the door, use the door handle, and go through. And it was just barely possible to go through. So here I was riding on a high. I was, celebrating. Woohoo! We made it through without taking sanity loss. You see the clapping on the screen there to celebrate. So that was tough, making it through without that second bone thief seeing us. Oh, forgot to edit out that failed attempt. I was trying to get through here without too many zombies seeing me. I think I managed to avoid at least one of them. I have crawling insects on the screen. That freaked me out as a kid, first time that happened. It looked so real on, you know, an old school CRT TV. This room really sucks in this challenge because it's a narrow hallway and they get stuck on each other and we can't do anything but just wait patiently. And so it patrols back, we need to wait here. And then by the time it goes over there, the other guy comes and they kind of block each other. So you just gotta be lucky with their pathing. And I think he managed to turn right there so we can get over to this corner. And now we're just waiting until there's a gap big enough. You'd think you can go through there, but you couldn't. So I had to wait for him to move a little bit more. And then we can squeeze on by. Here's a bone thief. Nothing too scary. Just open this shelf. Another trapper. Just waiting for him to move along so we can head into the corner. Actually, that was perfect positioning right there. I think we can just squeeze on by. Pretty lucky. Zombie and a trapper, so we can't run too much. And now we're backtracking several rooms back. So here I ran to make him a little bit angry, because whenever he's emitting this glow and screaming, they can't move. And so I deliberately ran far away enough so he doesn't detonate, but still to piss him off, so he stays in that optimal positioning. The return trip of this room is even worse, because now we have the camera working against us. So we're just patiently waiting. Maybe I should have sped this up. I know you wish you could just pull out that revolver and shoot them and run past, but nope. But yeah, this music, which is unique to Peter's chapter, it is so freaking good. You know, combining that with the atmosphere of the war going on outside, and the horror of the bone thieves and the corrupted humans, it's just wow. That was pretty scary right there, making it through without the horror draining my health. You can head over to the room to the right, back there, and get the magical elixir. But you don't have to. But it does make this fight coming up a lot more tolerable, because then you can restore your magic without having to run around. Here we need to use magic to deal damage to the boss. So spell 9 is magical attack, and we have all 3 strengths of it, 3, 5, and 7 points. And you regain magic by just moving your character. And it doesn't break rule number 1, restoring your magic by moving. But restoring it using an item, like the magical elixir, would break it. So here we go. This is the Narokath, the Greater Guardian. And it has this little shock pound attack, I don't know. And here we want to use a 7 point, which is the strongest spell. Our goal is to defeat this boss using as few spell casts as possible. And you can't deal damage to it in any other way than magical attack. So we do have to kind of break that rule, but I see it as mandatory magic, so it doesn't break it. In phase 2, this is where it becomes a little bit annoying. It will summon zombies, and the Greater Guardian will only be vulnerable once all 3 of these zombies spot you and drain your health. And if you begin casting when they drain your health, they will interrupt the spell. So you need to make sure all 3 of them see you, and then you begin casting. But that will make it so your magical attack will go through them first, and then attack the Greater Guardian, which takes way too long with the 7-point cast. And so the vulnerability state of the boss doesn't last long enough. So after many attempts, I wait here for the final zombie to see me, and as soon as it does, I cast a 5-point. And you see it's glowing green, so it's vulnerable. It hits all 3 zombies, and then finally it. Casting a 7-point does not give you enough time. And then just wait for the zombies to go down. And then rinse and repeat. So I don't think it's possible to... I mean, if you have Sanity... If they drain your sanity, they don't interrupt your magic cast, I believe. And then a 7-point should be possible. But since we don't have any sanity, they're draining our health, and that will cancel our magic casting. So we need to start casting as soon as the last zombie sees us, which only gives us enough time to cast a 5-point. So casting 2 of those is enough to get into phase 3, which is close quarter. So here... we need to move very slowly. We can only move very slowly, dodging these triangular pillar attacks. Need to look at those markings and make sure that we take the optimal, line out of the triangle. And after X amount of attacks, we are allowed to cast magic. And fortunately, we do have enough time to cast 7-point. And so the boss is defeated using 4 spell casts. I do not think it's possible to do it with 3 under these restrictions, but I would love to be proven wrong. And after that boss fight, we're heading over there, grabbing the artifact, and that will be the end of Peter Jacobs' chapter. Another close call, as you can see. Not as low health as Paul Luther or Edwin Lindsey had, but still pretty close call. And it was indeed possible. Thank you, Peter. Welcome back to the mansion. This is chapter 10, and we're playing as Edward Roivas, who is the grandfather of our main character. Now, I have a love and hate relationship with this chapter in particular. The first half I absolutely adore. I think the execution and gameplay and atmosphere is perfect. And the polar opposite for the second half. And you'll see why in a bit. But our first objective is to get the hour and minute hand from these books. And then head over to the grandfather clock to access the Tome of Eternal Darkness. Still punching doors, so we can start running immediately. Over here's a cutscene, we're skipping it, we use the minute and hour hand. I'm skipping some of the inventory usage there. Skipping another cutscene, and we're in this room, and we can get the Tome of Eternal Darkness. And now the chapter can begin for real. There's a bunch of resources in there. A revolver, some shotgun ammunition, even though we don't have it yet. And this chapter's main enemy is the vampire. Who can turn invisible and run from room to room. And he converts your servants, turns them against you. So you can imagine me being like 10 years old playing this game. This freaked me out. This was a really scary chapter because I didn't know where he was, where he's going, who of these servants can I trust. It's a fantastic chapter. Really adds to the survival horror, because you can't save the game during this whole segment. But you can listen to where he's going. If you have headphones, it's pretty simple to make out where he's going. So he's going into this room, trying to attack our servant. We don't really care about saving him. All we care about is dealing enough damage to this vampire so he retreats to his lair. And once he does that 3 times, I believe, he will drop a key item we need to progress with the game. And this is good for us. When he's doing that bloodsuck animation, we can just keep punching him in the head. Now this fight is kind of tedious. He swipes at you, turns invisible. Swipes at you, turns invisible. And so we just have to run around like this, punch him once or twice, not take any damage whatsoever, and listen to his growl every time. So this challenge makes it a little bit more tedious than, you know, scary or thrilling. Because normally you have access to the revolver, there's a sword you can find. And if you're lucky, you can even get access to an elephant gun in one of the cabinets, which is locked, and the key is given to you by one of the servants when you save them. In this case, we can't save the servants. We're not fast enough, and so they will all die. At least the servants, the vampire attacks, will most likely die. And so it returns down to the basement. It regains its health from that green obelisk. And here we're just waiting, patiently waiting for it to come out of its lair. So it's a very unique enemy that it's moving around the mansion independent of you. It does take its sweet time leaving its lair sometimes, but yeah. So now we're just listening and we can tell that it's heading up the stairs again. And you can see it for a brief moment there. I don't know if it's an emulation bug. It could be. Maybe it's the lightning. And there's the elephant gun right there. And that servant has the key for it. But you need to save him in order to get the key. And using only punches, it is impossible because we can't stagger the vampire. And so he's dead. And we're speeding this process up here because there's even more punching to be had. And you can see there's ammo in most of the rooms. And I like the idea that you can like find optional weapons. And yeah, this fight with the vampire and the chase and battle nature of it, it's really cool and different, and I just love it so much. And I like that it can also knock down furnitures and books and everything from the environment. And so same thing again, we're just patiently waiting for it to come out. And this third time, we'll have a special cutscene for it. Not sure why, but here he is. He attacks you immediately, but he can also swap over to your servants. So he's a bit unpredictable. He's going up here to attack him now. Starts to drain my health, but fortunately that didn't deal any damage. If you spin the stick fast enough, it shouldn't deal any damage to you. And so more punching to be had. We should speed this up a bit. We'll try to save our servants to the best of our ability, and we did. And so the third time you send him back, he will drop the top half of the basement key. The bottom half we got early, when he knocked over that urn. And so we can mix the parts and repair it using Magick. Skipping the inventory Magick menu there. So we repaired the key, and we can head in here. But here is where the challenge ends, in a way, because this obelisk, you need to destroy it in order to fully kill the vampire, but you can't destroy it with your fists. And so we need to have a weapon. You can use the revolver or the shotgun, I believe, to destroy it. But then you also need to pick up ammo, and so that's more pickup. So I'm just picking up the saber instead. And I'm only using it to destroy this obelisk. So the saber itself isn't a mandatory item pickup, but it's like you have to pick one weapon to use to destroy this thing. It is unfortunate. I wish you could just punch it down. So once it's destroyed, you need to... I accidentally hit the vampire there, so I kind of broke the challenge rules there, but tried to not mind it too much. And so here, the ladder is revealed, but you can't go down until the vampire is dead. The game forces you to defeat it. So we're back to punching, and we're speeding this up. Getting quite tired of hearing his screams over and over. At this point, it is really satisfying to get the elephant gun using the 2-round burst and enchanting it with 7-point, damage spell. And it's so powerful that your character flies back and lands on his ass. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of powerful feeling in it. But there we go, the vampire is dead, and we can immediately leave the room and head down to one of the worst parts of this entire game. At the very least, this is the worst area in the game. And there is a lot to say about it, but I'll try to keep it brief. So this is where we fought the Lesser Guardian. And if you continue downwards, you get into the ruins of Enga. And this place is infamous for several reasons. You need to activate all 9 of these panels to go up to one of the towers to initiate a rune. And then you get warped back to one of the rooms in the ruins. And then you make it back to that room and activate the next tower or rune. So this is it. This is why I'm quadrupling the speed here. It's very tedious. And now when we can't use the Magick pool spell to get infinite running stamina, and we'll also need to avoid taking sanity loss, this becomes very tedious and boring. And there is no unique music for this place. It's just running back to this room over and over and over, with some slight differences because it warps you to a different room. So you can clearly tell that they ran out of time for this area. They needed more time to flesh it out, make it more interesting, give it unique music, maybe a boss fight or something. But no, this is it. You activate the panel, go up in the tower, select a rune, go back down. If you select the wrong rune in one of those that you can select, you have to, get back up there again. But if you know which spell to cast, you don't have to return. The game will tell you later if you pick the right rune or not. In this case, since we picked Narokath as our affinity, red is the one we need here. And now we're losing so much health from especially these Lesser Guardians. They drain a lot of sanity the first time they see you, so we are now limping. You don't have to do the towers in the clockwise order I did, but I don't think it makes that much of a difference, because it's still like the... you take all of them together and you see, do you have enough health and sanity to make it through? And you will get your answer pretty soon. And if this wasn't enough, doing this area like this, 9 times, hitting a tower and running back, they force you to do the exact same thing, not exact, but the same thing again in the next chapter. So you're back in this area, just 2 chapters later, you're back in this area, and you're doing the same thing, going in that room, activating a panel, go up the tower, pick a rune, get transported to one of the rooms in this place, and run back. So in total, that's 18 times. Optimally. Like, if you don't pick the wrong rune at all, that's 18 times. Most people will pick the wrong rune on their first playthrough. So I'm guessing, on average, 21 times in a normal casual playthrough that you do this loop. And that's where Edward dies, right there, if you do it clockwise order. But he has this item called Liquid Courage. If you drink it, it will regain a little bit of sanity. And so here I just try to see how many charges or chunks, or chugs, do you need to take to beat the chapter? And so far we drank once. And this makes it even worse. Now when we are low on health and limping, it just makes it even more tedious. So I really lost my patience here. But if you are allowing yourself to use the liquid courage, I would advise to do so before your health gets low, so you can run at normal speed. Here I was stuck at this snail's pace. And here we need to take another chug, because this lesser guardian hasn't seen us yet, and so it will kill us right here. So we need to drink another chug right there. Use the dispel magic to get past it. I had to use the saber here to attack the lesser guardian, so it teleports out of the way. I'm not sure if using like the Ellia, the blue lesser guardian, who is like taller but thinner, or like smaller. Maybe you can run around it. I'm not sure. These Celototh green dudes, they're pretty big. And so they blocked us. I had to use the saber to attack it and make it warp out of the way. So here it is, the last tower. And here we do need to drink one more from the liquid courage. So, as we can tell, this chapter is flat out impossible under these restrictions. There are way too many horrors and way too many guardians who drain a lot of sanity. And I guess that's why they gave Edward the liquid courage, so you can regain it. But it's very, very common for people to have low sanity on this chapter. And having low sanity music here in an unmodified version of the game means hearing, you know, this dark, droning ambience with screaming children and women over and over and over as you go through these, 9 towers. It doesn't make for a good experience. For most people, this is just flat out the worst part of the entire game. But yeah, worst area at least. This right here took many, many attempts to get through with that snail pace speed, but I just edited out to the successful attempt. And that is the end of Edward's chapter. Good riddance, at least the second half. The first half is amazing. Here we are in chapter 11. We're playing as Michael Edwards, a Canadian industrial firefighter. There's a lot of weapons on the floor right there, but we're not gonna pick it up. This chapter is kind of action-packed. You have a wide variety of weapons. He is physically strong and fast, and it makes for a pretty fun chapter all in all. But it is the Forbidden City once again, so it does mean that the Forbidden City is the area you play in the most throughout this game. And it gets a little bit samey this time around. I do wish they had one more unique area in the game, but it is what it is. In this room there's a staff we need to pick up, and I'm trying to minimize the sanity loss we take. Some of the zombies haven't seen us yet, so I'm just moving around. Carefully not being seen. That one unfortunately did see me, but they don't drain it that much. But Edward's sanity is very low, which is kind of annoying. That does mean that you will hear that droning ambience and crying women and children very easily with Edwards, unless you keep your sanity up frequently with the use of finishing enemies and restoring sanity with magic. Alright, after a neat little light puzzle, we head to this ladder and we can get our Tome of Eternal Darkness. And there's gonna be lots of 7-point magic casting in this chapter, and from what I remember, Michael Edwards magic pool is pretty bad. So I don't understand design-wise why they have this chapter where you have to cast a lot of, you know, magic, costly spells, but then have a character that's more tailored towards combat with his health pool and speed and his arsenal of weapons. There's a lot of things that doesn't really make sense in that way, but hey. In this room we have 2 horrors. The first one will see us immediately. I don't think you can dodge that, but there's a second one we need to avoid being looked at. And he's right over here to the left. They're doing ranged attacks when you're far away. So yeah, that one to the left hasn't seen us yet. So I need to make sure he doesn't drain my health in this case, because my sanity is already depleted. Unfortunately, he does not see us from there, so we can head on to the next room. There's an optional item and enemies over there, so we're gonna skip that. Lots of enemies in this room, but I do believe that none of them see us because they're fighting their own fight. So we just run through. Several zombies in this room and a gatekeeper. Trying to minimize, you know, the ticking sanity there. But it does drain it 2 times, I think. Once. Lots of trappers here. Nothing too problematic. You just sneak on by. And several zombies, and there is like an obelisk up there, which we need to warp away using Summon Trapper. Now I made sure that these zombies don't go up to the barrier that gets deployed whenever you summon a creature, because it can damage them if they touch it. So they barely stay out of it. We use the Trapper's warp to get rid of that obelisk, and then we can make progress. And they take each other out. Edited out a Sanity cutscene right there. A couple of more trappers, nothing to worry about. You know, even though you return to this area several times throughout the game, they try their best to make it different, you know, change the environment. It's a completely different year. It's much, much further in the future than when Pious was here. Almost 2 millennia later. And new, like, puzzles and, yeah, weapons and stuff like that. Here you need to use a 7-point bind spell, and you can see his magic pool is so freaking short. So you can only afford to cast it once. So once you take him out, you need to go up here and grab the plastic explosive. And here, run out before he sees you. I'm honestly very surprised he does not see you and drain your sanity. But that's fortunate for us. Here the camera's against us a little bit, but it's not a big deal. But almost, that was like a pixel away from triggering that the trapper exploding. Here we need to cast a 7-point reveal invisible to reveal this door that is invisible for whatever reason over there. The room to the right is optional, we skip that. And here we're back to the yellow room, the doom room for this challenge. There is a C4 detonator. I think we got it the first time. So on our first attempt, we optimized the shock frame rule, like I call it, as I call it. Tried to get through here with as few shocks as possible, and we can, just like Roberto, make it through once, but not twice. Heading over to this bridge, we need to do another 7-point cast spell to enchant the explosives. I think this is overkill. Like, why do they make this character cast so many 7-point spells when his magic pool is so low? Pretty bad game design, honestly. But hey. 3 worms this time. Punch them out. Uses the enchanted C4 explosives. And now we have a time limit to get out of dodge. And the time limit is not the problem here. It's, as you know, the yellow floor. So even with optimal ticks here, we're limping and we make it little bit further than Roberto, but not much. And this is where Michael Edwards' challenge ends. Pretty much the same area as Roberto. And so once again, if you break one of the rules, I would say 5 cast shield spell. Exact same as Roberto. 1 cast to get over here, and then 1 cast to get back. I don't think it's possible with only like a 3 cast. Now that I think about it, I don't think I... yeah, I did actually attempt that. I don't think it's possible. But with 10 shields in total, you don't take any damage from the yellow floor at all. But now there's a bunch of new enemies. You still have 1 shield there, so it takes away the health drain from the horror seeing you. Yeah, a bunch of new enemies. We need to escape. The time limit is very generous, so don't need to stress out. These tiny Mantrock zombies don't drain your sanity. I think that's a cool detail. They're so tiny that our character is not really bothered by them. But the taller one does indeed drain our sanity. This long hallway now has 2 horrors and they drain a fair bit of health. But thanks to those shields, we have enough. Sure, we're moving slower now, but they can't really catch up. And that, I believe, should be the end of Michael Edwards' chapter, because the end is in the next room. So unfortunately, that's another fail for the challenge, thanks to that floor once again. But you did your best, Michael. And here we are with the final chapter of the game. We're playing as Alexandra Roivas, and we are back in the ruins of Enga, and it couldn't be worse. Because not only do we need to do those 9 towers once again, but this time we have more obstacles. And the worst offender being this yellow floor all across this main room, which you have to go through many times. And Alex doesn't have that much health, so we can just barely make it over here before we start limping. There's a barrier in front of the door, so we need to use a 7-point dispel magic to get rid of it. And that's where the challenge ends. You can't even get past the very first room. You will die right here. And so just like Roberto and Michael Edwards, you can survive it using shield spell. And so we're trying first with 7-point. Because we have to spend way more time in the yellow floor this time than with those 2. So you can make it over here unscathed, and then you can cast the spell magic once again. And then use the remaining shields to get into the control room, whatever you want to call it. But I gotta be honest, I lost my patience here. The challenge is already broken for Alexandra. She can't even make it past the first screen. And it's like kind of arbitrary. How many spell casts do you allow? Like how many shield spells? And at that point it ceased to be interesting for me. And so I didn't want to go through all 9 of these towers once again, knowing full well that the challenge is impossible anyway. But it would be fun to see the final boss. But yeah, I couldn't bring myself to, play through it here in this example. But during the stream itself, I did make it over there. But it's like, once you are there, how do you define the proper, like, health and your magic and your resources? So it just, like I said, it becomes too arbitrary. Since you can't even make it there in the first place. But you see, many of the rooms now have added obstacles, which means even more, like 7-point spell casting. And then you're back in this main room and you have to get more shields if you want to make it through without limping and dying. And so, yeah, once I made it through here, I just called it quits. But I didn't want to end, this video on that note. It's very anticlimactic. So this is part of the stream when I made it to the final boss after you're done with all of those 9 towers. And you fight Pious Augustus himself. And here you need to use several spell casts. You need to enchant your Gladius sword weapon to deal any form of damage to him. If you punch him like that, he will just stand and laugh, and that's it. Can't really make any sort of progress here. So just enchanting it with a 3-point Celototh in this case, because he has Ulioth. So green would be his weakness. We can attack him once, which will reveal this artifact, or the Veil of Ulioth. And once you attack it 3 times, I believe, you play as the past characters from those chapters. And then you kind of rinse and repeat until that Ulioth veil is destroyed. And then you end the boss fight by killing Pious directly through the means of enchanted weapons. So starting the fight with full health and enchanting your weapon and attacking him and doing all that without getting hit should be possible. But the thing with Pious is that he drains your sanity / health many times, not just once. So he has that like half ticking. He has like a cooldown on his sanity drain. And so if you're not healing or using shields, you will eventually fall prey to his sanity drain. So I don't think it is possible without healing or using shields. But it might be. And I'm a little bit sorry that I didn't get adequate footage for this. But it still stands that Alex's chapter isn't possible because of that very first room with the yellow floor. And so, like, it just doesn't really matter in the end if you can do this boss with the challenge or not. So we're just gonna let the bad guy win.
I spit at thee. The darkness shall be eternal.
And this is where the challenge ends, and that's why it's called the impossible challenge. Sure, it was possible for most of the characters. Was it 7 out of 12? Which is great. That is way more than I initially thought going into this challenge. And like I said before, the pinnacle, like what made this whole thing worth it was Lindsey, Paul, and Peter. But especially Paul. That was a hair straw away from being impossible. Lindsey needed some clever movement to avoid sanity loss from some enemies, namely the gatekeeper in the very, very first room. And Peter's chapter was also interesting, dodging some of those bone thieves, and then minimize the amount of spell casts for the boss itself, and still ending with pretty low health. So all in all, I had a lot of fun with this challenge. It's interesting to see how far you can push a game like this with restrictions. Maybe someday I'll try to change it up a bit. Maybe allow healing through the means of items only. That would make chapters like Karim possible, because he has that talisman, and we saw that using 4 or 5 charges from the talisman allows the chapter to be beatable under those restrictions. If you are allowed to heal, while still not using magic. Roberto is still impossible, but yeah. Michael is also impossible. Edward was possible, thanks to his, what was it, liquid courage. And so using items to restore health makes it so Karim and Edward's chapters are beatable. But Roberto, Michael, and Alex are still impossible with the remaining of those restrictions. But all in all, I want to thank you all very much for watching and following along. Hopefully it was interesting. Like I said, I had a lot of fun playing through this and theory crafting. And if you have any opinions or any suggestions, maybe something I missed, please let me know in the comments below. If you've never played this game before, I highly recommend it. And with that, thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you in another video.